Spies are as old as militaries and governments. During World War II, women began to play a larger role in the espionage game, and the United States was deeply involved. One was an American woman who would become one of the most successful spies for the Allies, and one of the most wanted by the Germans. Who was Virginia Hall? Why was she sought out by both British and U.S. intelligence? What made her so effective? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, a veteran of the United States Army and Marine Corps, former history professor, book author, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History. Virginia Hall Guillot was born Virginia Hall on April 6, 1906 in Baltimore, Maryland. She attended Radcliffe College and then Barnard, the prestigious women's college, studying foreign languages, including French, German, and Italian. During the 1920s, she went to Europe and studied abroad in Austria, France, and Germany, where she made good friends. Some of these would become critical later. In 1931, Hall began working as a clerk for the consular service at the American Embassy in Warsaw, Poland. She considered this a good move for applying to the U.S. Foreign Service later. Her ambition was to become an American ambassador. The problem was that out of around 1,500 American Forest Service officers, there were only 6 women at that time. In 1932, Hall had an accident while on a bird hunting trip. Her shotgun discharged into her foot. Gangrene set in that required amputation of her lower left leg below the knee. Fitted with a wooden leg she nicknamed Cuthbert, Hall had to resign from the Department of State in 1939. She returned to Washington, D.C., attended graduate school at American University, where she completed her studies. Hall returned to France, where she had volunteered with an ambulance company assisting the French wounded during the German invasion. She managed to get out of southern France and arrive in London, where her linguistic skills caught the attention of the British Secret Service. However, a special operations executive learned of her, especially Peter Churchill and Benjamin Calburn. She returned, being only the second woman dropped into France, posing as an American reporter for the New York Post. Her specialty was getting in with German officers at informal gatherings and learning a lot from their loose talk. After several months of setting up her local spy network, codenamed Heckler, she returned to England. After advanced training in communications, weapons, and techniques resisting interrogation, she joined Churchill, with whom she went back to France in 1942 on a few covert missions to deliver money, weapons, and SOE agents to support the French spy networks and resistance. She also organized escape networks for Allied airmen to evade capture and return to England, usually through Spain or organizing covert nocturnal pickups. Airmen were told to make their way to Lyon and get to the American consulate and ask for Oliver. Hall would see that they escaped through Spain. She also worked with Gaby Bloch, whose husband, Jean-Pierre, was one of 12 resistance personnel captured and placed in the Mozac prison near Bergerac. They planned their escape starting in October 1941, and on June 15, 1942, the escape happened. Hall met with the escapees and placed them in safe houses and later got them out of the country. Hall herself remained in the country, working primarily in the regions of Toulouse and Lyon. She became friends with the owner of a brothel that serviced German soldiers. This became one of her main intelligence gathering sources. Following the Allied invasion of North Africa, German troops invaded and occupied Vichy French territory, which had been previously autonomous, and with them came the secret police. Hall was already on the capture list, so she left after a few of her informants had themselves been captured after being betrayed. The Germans were very good at capturing Allied spies and SOE agents, and under torture, she became known to the Abwehr German intelligence as well as the Gestapo. They called her the Limping Lady. Learning that she was wanted and being hunted down by none other than the Gestapo chief in Lyon, SS Captain Klaus Barbie, she planned her escape. Barbie had established his headquarters at the Hotel Terminus in Lyon, where he personally tortured adult and child prisoners for information, hence learning of Miss Hall. Barbie even had posters made up, claiming, "The enemy's most dangerous spy. We must find and destroy her," with rewards for her capture. After several of the operatives had been compromised, tortured, and executed, she fled to Spain, in the depth of winter, on a trek in deep snow that took 3 days and covered 50 miles across the Pyrenees Mountains, where she was arrested by the Spanish for crossing the border illegally. After some diplomatic wrangling, the American embassy in Madrid managed to get her released 6 weeks later. Upon her return to England, she wanted to return to France. However, the British felt that it was too risky as her cover had been blown. Hall knew that her countrymen were getting into the active spy game. At her own request, she was transferred to the Office of Strategic Services on the orders of Brigadier General William Wild Bill Donovan. After being commissioned as a second lieutenant, she was trained by the Special Operations Branch. The OSS sent her to Brittany, France, with a false identity and a code name. She trained French resistance forces in guerrilla warfare, established safe houses for agents, airmen, and hiding the members of the three-man Jedburgh teams. One of her best efforts was mapping out drop zones for secret parachute drops and organizing escape routes, and once again creating safe houses for downed Allied airmen so that they could evade capture. After the torture and murder of Jean Moulin on July 8, 1943, who was the primary leader of the French resistance appointed by Charles de Gaulle, the resistance began to fall apart all over the country as there was no central leadership. Moulin had organized the vast majority of resistance groups into a more cohesive and smoother running operation. Hall had to start reorganizing her network on her own authority, but she was supported by Moulin's successor, Pierre Deschamps. Working in and around Paris from March to July 1944, she mapped out locations of German garrisons, headquarters, and with her wireless radio confirmed German troop movements. She was then relocated to southern France to prepare the local maquisards for the planned August 15, 1944 invasion, codenamed Operation Dragoon. Hall would be the primary person responsible for ensuring that the Germans were harassed, attacked, and engaged behind enemy lines, and she relayed German troop movements. However, one of her larger resistance cells was betrayed by a German agent and priest who had infiltrated the organization, named Robert Alish, who had betrayed her network in Lyon to Klaus Barbie. He was captured after the war and executed in Paris. Many of her operatives were also executed after torture, but a few survived. Being a woman, a foreigner, and only a junior officer, she had problems getting the resistance leaders to work for her. She managed to have 3 airdrops of weapons and cash, which gave her more credibility, and the Communist Maquis did very well, forcing German troops to relocate north to counter the sabotage and random ambush attacks. Her cells conducted assassinations, blowing up railroads, bridges, and fuel and ammunition supply depots. According to former OSS officer, Jedburgh team member, and founder of the Green Berets, Colonel Aaron Bank, he said, "Of all the 50 or so resistance movements, most were unreliable, and some worked for the Germans, but the Maquis, with proper leadership, would get the job done. You did not have to kick them in the ass to get them to fight." Before the war ended, Hall had her own network of 1,500 spies, as well as her known contacts in the French resistance leadership, such as Pierre Deschamps, who replaced Jean Moulin. According to Deschamps, during my interview with him, he stated, "Virginia Hall was, in my mind, the most effective organizer that the Americans had. She was reliable, and all of her information was verified and helped to shorten the war. I added her name to my list of people to receive recognition. I am happy that she received it." After the war, she married Paul Gaston Guillot, an American OSS officer with whom she had served, and they married in 1950. She was then recruited by Allen W. Dulles into the Central Intelligence Agency. Hall spent 15 years as an intelligence analyst for the CIA in Langley, Virginia, with the Special Activities Division, specializing in organizing French resistance networks due to a possible Soviet invasion. Ironically, the man who hunted her, the butcher of Lyon, Klaus Barbie, was also hired by the agency. despite being responsible for over 14,000 deaths, mostly Jews and some resistance fighters during the war. Because she was a woman, and the fact that she had a wartime career that eclipsed and intimidated her Ivy League male superiors, she was constantly passed over for promotions. Hall was made a member of the Order of the British Empire, became the only woman to receive the American Distinguished Service Cross, and she also received the French Croix de Guerre avec Palme. Virginia Hall died on July 8, 1982, and is buried in the Druid Ridge Cemetery in Pikesville, Maryland. In 1988, she was inducted into the Military Intelligence Corps Hall of Fame. In 2016, a CIA field agent training facility was named the Virginia Hall Expeditionary Center. In 2006, 100 years after her birth, she was honored by the French and British ambassadors to the United States, and she was inducted into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame in 2019. Virginia Hall remains one of the most effective and decorated spies in American history, regardless of gender. She was one of a kind indeed. Thank you for watching Forgotten History. Please click like, subscribe, and share. Send us comments and show ideas, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Until next time.